Hi there, my name is Jonathan Delbridge and I teach piano and organ and also perform at concerts and do accompanying work. And this is the first in a series of videos that I'd like to put together looking at various aspects of piano technique, and the idea is to perhaps hopefully offer some ideas, but I also hope that perhaps those of you who are watching these videos will be able to give me some of your ideas as well, so that we can perhaps use this as a way of bouncing some ideas off each other. And today what I thought we'd do is have a little look at scales for beginners. When I say beginners, I'm kind of thinking of those who are working towards either grades 1, 2 or 3 with the Associated Board of the Royal Schools of Music or one of the other main exam boards. Scales are a very important part of piano practicing. They not only are great for exercising the fingers and building up finger strength, but they're also patterns that often appear in pieces, and of course every piece of music is normally based on a major or minor key, so practicing scales is going to help us towards being able to play the pieces. For grade 1 piano, generally, certainly with the Associated Board, I'm not sure about some of the other examples, but you're expected to be able to play the scales with each hand separately, and then at grade 2 or 3 you start to put the scales hands together, and also incorporates a few more sharps and flats. So the thought today, I'll show you some ideas with C major scale, which is normally the first scale people tend to look at, and show you perhaps some ideas on that, and look forward to hearing some of your ideas too. You can get the scale books with all these scales actually written out. Personally, I don't use them. I find it much more useful to be able to get the pupil to actually learn the patterns rather than actually trying to read it from music. What I do sometimes do is write the scales out, similar to how I've done here, if you're able to see that. Let me hold that close. There we go. So you've got the names, the notes along the top, and then underneath you've got the fingering for the right hand and the fingering for the left hand. Obviously you can write that out for your students like that, or perhaps even better still, you can get them to write it out as you explain the pattern. Or sometimes I do it without even writing it out at all. So with C major scale, which follows the standard finger pattern, I might say that there are two ways of looking at it. Firstly, the fourth finger is only used next to C, and always used when you're next to C. So in the right hand, you're going out 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, because you're next to C, then you tuck the thumb under, and then 4 again there before the top note. So that's one way of doing it. Or the other way I do it is to think of the pattern 3, 4, 3. So we go up to the third finger, tuck the thumb under, then up to the fourth finger, so that's the 3, 4, and then thumb under, and then up to third thumb under. So you've got 3 thumb, 4 thumb under, 3 thumb under. Coming down you go to the thumb 3 over, then after thumb 4 over, then after the thumb 3 over. So that 3, 4, 3 is one way I do it, and that works for both hands. So sometimes I use those patterns, sometimes I write it out on the sheet. It depends a bit on the individual student and how they find it easiest to learn these scales. But once we've actually worked out the pattern and they're getting used to the pattern, it's then how we go about learning it. And often if you get the student, I find, to play the whole scale in one go, they often find that difficult to remember and maybe get a little bit confused. So what I sometimes do is use the sheet that I've given them or that they've written out, and maybe use another book, and just cover over all the notes apart from the first 2, C and D, on the sheet. And I then get them to just play those notes. When they're happy with that, which they should be fairly quickly, I then move the sheet along one, so they now do C, D and E. Make sure they're doing the right fingering. Then we move the sheet along one more to incorporate F, where the thumb goes under. If at any stage they make a mistake, so what they might do at that stage is use the fourth finger on F instead of tucking the thumb under. And if they do that, I then get them to stop at that point and just practice that section until they get it right maybe 3 times in a row, so they've really learnt that part of the scale. Then we can move the book along one more. Using a book, I find, is just a good tool to stop them playing the whole scale. Otherwise, they might be tempted to carry on up the scale pattern even if they're making some mistakes. So that's one way I find to teach scales. And you may not teach the whole scale in one go. You may end up, after one practice session, doing the first octave, and that's as far as they go at that point. Obviously you can also use the book and start at the top of the scale and go down, so first 2 notes, then give them the first 3, and so on. And personally I find that's quite a good way of learning scales when you first start off. Some other ideas that I've come across before is to get some little post-it notes or something that's not going to make the keys sticky, but where you can maybe just pop them on the keys where the thumb goes so that they know clearly where to put the thumb. That's another technique, although I've not used that one so much myself. Once they've actually learnt the scale pattern, it's then a case of getting the scales nice and even and fluent for grade 1. And I find here a metronome is quite useful. For grade 1 they recommend you aim to have the scales at a speed of 60, where you get 2 notes per a metronome beat. So I might use a metronome with them and maybe set the metronome to 120 so they get a beat for every note of the scale, get them to play steadily with that to get a nice even tone if they're struggling with keeping the rhythm nice and even. What I also do though then to take things a little bit further is to get them to play the scales in lots of different ways. When we actually play a scale in a piece of music, it's very rare that we actually play it as we've been practicing it. We don't normally start on middle C and do 2 octaves with it all being even tone all the way up and down. Normally when you've got a scale in a piece of music there might be a gradual crescendo, getting louder towards the top, or a diminuendo, or the whole scale may be quiet or loud. So even at grade 1 I think it's useful to be able to get them to start to experiment with practicing scales in different ways using different loud and softs. So they may start quietly and then crescendo and diminuendo and things like that, so that they're not only developing the technique of being able to play scales, but also they're getting a range of colours from the piano, a range of expressions, and I think that's going to help them a lot with their piano practicing and with their playing in pieces. You can also use different rhythms for practicing scales. Obviously at beginner stage you want to keep this fairly simple, but quite a simple one that can be quite useful is to practice scales with a dotted rhythm, just very slowly. So instead of and so on, just use a steady dotted rhythm. And so on. That can be another way of practicing them, just to build up a little bit more finger strength and try doing them with different rhythms. But hopefully that's given you a few ideas on scales for the very beginners. Perhaps on the next video I record I might do something for more intermediate students. But as I said, I hope you'll come back to me with some of your ideas, some of your techniques for practicing scales. I'm looking forward to hearing from those.